Welcome to the Undercovers Football Podcast. I'm Ben along with Connor and Paul, and tonight we have another special playoff edition of the Undercovers Podcast. The Bills season remains very much alive after I believe it was 31-7 victory over Denver. I think that was the final.
Yes,
Mhm. Yeah, you know what
it
that's
was.
called? It's called
And
big dubs. That's what that's called.
big dubs.
Massive
Yes.
dubs.
And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that's like the Bills' 10th game scoring 30 points in the last 12 or something like that. I think the
Mhm.
only one they
Yes,
didn't was
yeah,
obviously
something
the
crazy
two
like that.
Patriots games, ironically,
Yeah, the
um,
second one don't count.
who were, probably the worst team on the schedule. Yeah, the second one doesn't really count, so we'll say 9 out of 10. But
Mhm.
nonetheless, a very solid effort by the Bills. And now, obviously, they'll have a much taller task Sunday as Lamar Jackson and company roll into Orchard Park, a matchup, that has been getting hype for a long time in the making between the
Mhm.
two MVP frontrunners. I mean, if they didn't already complete the MVP voting, I would say winner of Sunday's game should get the MVP. But unfortunately, I
Mhm.
believe MVP voting has already wrapped up.
Yeah.
But let's
It
get
has.
into our quick takes. Um, and mine, I decided to go with something a little more spicy. Which of
Ooh,
these two
spicy.
head coaches between Sunday's game in Buffalo and Baltimore is under more pressure?
Ooh,
Because McDermott, this is going to be the Bills' fourth, technically fifth straight trip to the divisional round, but they are facing the possibility of losing four straight in the divisional round. So, if they do, they will have failed to reach an AFC championship for four consecutive seasons after that wonderful season, which, I don't think a lot of us really expected in 2020. I mean, we all knew they would be better coming off the wild card round to Houston, but they really took a huge step forward. And Baltimore obviously has a potential three-time MVP winner with maybe just one AFC championship game appearance. And for John Harbaugh, it's going to be over 10 years since his last Super Bowl appearance. So for
yeah.
Baltimore,
Mhm.
I think both teams are facing different types of pressure. And I did kind of have an interesting discussion with another Bills fan on Twitter, kind of regarding the subject. I get it. Baltimore has all of the all pros, the Pro Bowlers, but if you really dissect the teams, like I don't think on paper the Ravens team is that much better than the Bills. Maybe a couple skill positions here or there, like you know, maybe Henry's slightly better than James Cook, but James Cook has still had a wonderful season. I think the Bills had the better O line. I'm going to be biased. They have the better quarterback.
Duh.
Secondary, it's kind of a toss up because as good as Marlon Humphrey is, we have Christian Benford who's been playing just as good. I think Douglas is probably better than Stevens. And yes, they have Kyle Hamilton, linebackers. They got Smith, but we also have Bernard and Milano. And if we get the Milano that we saw on Sunday, I think that is a very good sign for this defense. Now, the defensive lines, our D line, especially on the interior, has definitely underperformed. So for me, I think that both coaches should feel a decent amount of pressure, and I don't think either of them will get fired if they lose this game. But if they lose this game, the fraud allegations are only going to get louder for both of them. And as we saw last Sunday between the wild card matchup that the Ravens had, Pittsburgh and Baltimore, Mike Tomlin is finally starting to get some heat. It feels like, yes, he's not going anywhere for now, but if they have another season like they had last year where they have a big divisional lead and they lose the last 5 games of the season, and that's now 6 straight playoff um, games where they've had a double-digit deficit at halftime. Their last playoff win, I believe, was 2016 when they had Ben Roethlisberger, and I know
Mhm.
Connor kind of is in some Yinger circle, so he knows this
Mhm.
too. But the Steelers fan base is finally starting to turn on Tomlin after all these years, and I think it's just a
Finally?
matter of I think it's only a matter of time before he may end up somewhere else. And I think the same thing can be said about McDermott and Harbaugh, not obviously after this year, but if they continue down the same path of making it to the playoffs, but not reaching the AFC championship game, I think something does have to give with both these coaches because both Allen and Jackson are on MVP trajectories or not MVP, sorry. Yes, they're having MVP caliber season, but Hall of Fame trajectories. And
Yeah.
it's not both of them failing to ultimately make a Super Bowl, but the goal is to win a Super Bowl, but not having a Super Bowl championship on their resumes is really going to hurt their legacies at the end of the day. And both quarterbacks are talented enough to be first ballot Hall of Famers. So something has to be said about something has to give eventually. And if these two coaches, Harbaugh and McDermott, still are underachieving, I think it's only a matter of time before maybe both teams go another direction, with the coaching because neither team has beaten Kansas City in the playoffs. Neither team has made a Super Bowl with their current quarterback. I mean, it's been since Joe Flacco since Baltimore won a Super Bowl. And let's be real, they were a blown coverage away in that mile high or that miracle in the mile high or whatever they call it from even making the Super Bowl when Jacoby Jones, rest in peace, had that down that forced overtime.
Yep. You know what, though? I am circling back to your point, Ben, about how you were saying that the Steelers faithful have all but had it with Mike Tomlin. No, that sentiment's been around since 2018. And that is, if you were going to look at a time to fire Mike Tomlin, it was after the 2018 collapse. They were 7-2-1, dropped 4 straight games to one of those teams, which was a 2-win Raiders team that they should have never lost to.
Was that the Jesse James year or the year before?
That was the year before. 2017 was the Jesse James no catch, should have been a catch, robbed him of the 1 seed type deal. But
you could
no,
also
was
look
bad.
at but you could also look at the fact that in 2017 they never really recovered from that Jesse James no catch because they got boat raced by, let's call a spade a spade. The Jacksonville defense was probably better, but that offense certainly wasn't. And Blake Bortles and Leonard Fournette went in there and they put up like 30 points in the first half or whatever it was. And Pittsburgh made it a game of it at the end, kind of like they did against Cleveland. But Cleveland went up 21-0.
28-0 in quarter one.
28-0. And Kevin Stefanski wasn't even on the sidelines because he had COVID. So
never wanted to drink bleach more in my life after that one. But no, what I'm saying is 2018, they were 7-2-1, bound to make the playoffs, like 99% chance to make the playoffs. They dropped their next games to the Broncos, the Chargers, the Raiders, beat the Patriots somehow, then lose a game to the Saints. After that loss, they needed help to get into the postseason. They didn't get that help, and they were eliminated. 7-2-1 to 9-6-1, and that was the year Tomlin should have been fired. But no, he rallied back in 19, and that's why he's still here. It's the same situation I feel with Sean McDermott, because in this type of season, the fact that this team should have been 10, maybe 9 wins, and they won 13 games, oh yeah, I mean, that's a testament to his coaching. So he's going to be around for quite a while, regardless of the outcome of this game. And hopefully we're going to be changing a little bit of history here this time around. So I want to go ahead and move on
really quick
to what?
If I could just to get
What you
into
got,
this
Paul?
conversation, just really quick, just a quick point.
What you got?
Is this kind of goes back to Ben's first point, which goes to 4 straight divisional. This is the 4th straight year we made it to the divisional round. Last 3 years, we've been eliminated from the divisional round for 3 straight years. If the Bills lose this Sunday, the Bills will be the first team to lose in 4 straight divisional round playoff games.
Yep.
The first team ever to do such a feat.
Well,
and
they were also the first.
The Bills
team ever
are
to
also
lose
one of
4
the
straight Super Bowls. So
right,
exactly the same thing.
The Bills would have basically 2 records on their list of history of being the first time a team has ever lost 4 straight Super Bowls, and a team that could possibly lose 4 straight divisional games, which kind of puts, I guess, a little bit more pressure on Sean McDermott heading into this game
No.
than, than Harbaugh, even though Harbaugh hasn't won a Super Bowl in about 10 years.
But
And,
he at least
he's
has
probably definitely
one.
feel it. What?
He
He
at least has
has
one.
one. Yes.
Yeah, he
I
at least
mean,
has one, so there's not as much pressure, but there's still pressure from that fan base with with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry to get something done. Because if you really look at it, the winner of this game should go to the Super Bowl.
you'd think, but it's still, depending on who they see on the other side, anything could happen. I won't say the Chiefs are a guaranteed lock to win over Houston because that Houston defense is actually pretty good. But we're going to see exactly what happens on Saturday concerning that game. I
Let's get
definitely.
to our next quick tick, though.
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
this is a
the
fun
next
one.
quick
This is a
take.
really fun one. Paul, I want you to lead this one off because you
Yeah.
gave this one to me, and I got
So
to
we
give
all
you the
know
best
that
reaction
Jerry
possible.
Jones has relieved Mike McCarthy of his job. Even though Mike McCarthy's job was basically over when the season ended, his contract was coming to an end.
Took way too long to happen.
But he doesn't come back to Dallas. This
Mhm.
opens up a fun little door of one particular head coach that's just sitting in his office in Boulder, Colorado, Deion Sanders. And the possibility of him, going from the college level to the NFL level is probably low. But if he has the opportunity of coaching one of his sons, he could possibly be intrigued of coming to the NFL. So, Connor, I ask you this. Should Deion leave Colorado to coach the Cowboys?
Absolutely not. Do you want to throw away your franchise? Then go for it. I got to give you the funny moment because, of course, it would be hilarious. I saw a tweet earlier from, I think it was like FanDuel or someone like that, like a sports book, that actually had a proposed trade for the Cowboys to take the number 1 overall pick from the Tennessee Titans, and it involved them giving the Titans Dak Prescott. But I just want you to laugh. Think about this for a moment, right? They were this proposed trade was sending Dak Prescott to the Tennessee Titans so the Cowboys could acquire the first overall pick and a couple of other, like I think another second, like maybe next year's first. I don't remember what the actual thing, what the compensation was, but do you want to actually set up a real disaster? Then yeah, go for it. That'd be absolutely hilarious. I'd love to see Dion go to coach his son at Dallas and then just watch the whole thing implode like everybody knows it will. I mean, look at what happened in Colorado. They really didn't get that far, and they were quite the showcase off the field as opposed to on the field. So,
Let me just say real quickly on the Deion thing, like this has kind of been Jerry's MO recently, and that's why even if they bring Deion in, and even if it's not Deion, I don't think the Cowboys are gonna hire a serious candidate just because of the fact that Jerry Jones, as their general manager, has far too much control and cares far too much about the circus following the team around. Let's be honest, the team every year still manages to stay in the news cycle, and it creates some type of false hope for the Cowboys fans where they can delusionally convince themselves that no matter what, this is their year.
Super Bowl.
And if Deion goes there, I don't really expect anything to majorly change from that aspect. But as Connor mentioned, they had one of the best corners, receivers, quarterbacks on their team in a weak Big 12 conference, and they weren't able to even make it to the championship game.
Nope.
So the fact that they weren't able to make it in the Big 12, you really think that Jerry bringing Deion to the Big D is going to make that franchise turn it around? I don't think so. And I also think it's as much crap as myself and many others have given Dak Prescott over the years. And yes, he still may always have the title of being a playoff choker, but at least in the regular season, he'll put up his numbers and put them in position to be a playoff team. Are you sure that Shedeur Sanders is going to be even half of what Dak Prescott is right now? No, not at all. And is that going to keep CeeDee Lamb happy, who we know no matter what, Dak still throws the ball to CeeDee Lamb roughly 10 to 20 times a game. So CeeDee will get his targets with Dak and he'll put up his numbers. I agree with Connor. I think it's a terrible idea, but I don't expect Dallas to really bring in a serious coaching candidate either way. I mean, we're hearing rumors about Jason Witten, for crying out loud. Like, I mean, we didn't see what the whole Jeff Saturday situation ended in Indy just a couple years ago. And let's bring in another completely inexperienced coach who's only coached at the high school level just for the nostalgia aspect from the fan base.
Hilarious.
It was. And if Dallas does the same thing, it will also be equally hilarious. But let's get into the main focus of tonight's show, which is the preview between that Bill. Oh, actually, no, we gotta recap the Bills Broncos game. So let's start.
How many of y'all were scared? How many of y'all were scared when they went up 7-0?
I was a little nervous, to be honest with you, but I'm nervous in every playoff game, to be honest with you.
Who isn't?
But let's start with this. What stood out more from that game? The Bills scoring 31 on the Broncos, or the Bills defense? And I actually really like this question. I would like to say the Bills scoring 31, especially in the fashion they did it against that Denver defense. But I also think the way the defense stood on its head after that quick opening drive touchdown was even more impressive. Now, the defensive line still did not create a ton of pressure at times, so that's a little bit concerning going into the divisional round. But for me, I think the defense was the star of the show on Sunday.
Yeah,
it absolutely was.
1000% agree. Just if you look at it this way, it's just like entering this game, we kind of knew the Bills could score against a really good defense. Like, there's several examples of this. KC, the Kansas City game, we were able to score points. Especially the game against Detroit. We put up like 40 on Detroit's defense, even though it still was a good defense, even though they were primarily hurt. And then same thing against San Francisco. Even though they were still kind of a hurt defense, they're still a pretty good pesky defense, and we still were able to put 30 on that defense. And you kind of look at what the Bills did in this game. They applied a lot of pressure to on Bo Nix. 14 of his 27 dropbacks saw pressure. And that's about 51.9% pressure rate from the Bills on Sunday. That comes from Next Gen Stats and Carl Jones, who pointed that out. It honestly doesn't feel real, because it honestly doesn't feel like we got that much pressure. But if you really look at it, the Bills did that on Sunday. After that first touchdown, that long drive, that quick score by Bo Nix to Ted Johnson, that definitely felt like
Troy Franklin.
Yeah, it was Troy Franklin.
Troy Franklin.
You're thinking about the ring. I got the wrong Oregon receiver.
The other Oregon receiver mixed up. But after that, it felt like that Denver was trying to make a statement. Like we're here and we're ready to play against you. And the Bills defense basically shut them down the rest of the game. And they just stopped them on third downs. They got pressure to Bo Nix. Basically, everything we said last Tuesday happened for the Bills defense this week against the Denver Broncos. The defensive line got pressure. Matt Milano looked amazing.
It's like we know
Bob
what we're
Miller
talking
was
about.
Just a beast out there. And a fully healthy defense against Denver just overpowered that Broncos offense. Yes, that Broncos offense was young, and they were young, but they still had a lot of talents that could hurt this Bills defense. And none of that came to fruition because the Bills defensive strategy showed up and defense showed up. Now, the bigger question is, are they going to show up this week but we'll get into that later.
Oh boy, it's going to be quite the time.
You want to get into our standout players of the game? I think I know who Paul's is, so I'll let him stick with that. For me, it's got to be Spencer Brown. He's been, I mean, he kind of took that next step last season, but this year he's just completely on another level. And just kind of what
Mhm.
stood out to me, even after watching the Bills game, is you remember the tape that he put out against the Rams where he was just toying with Jared Verse throughout the game. And after watching what Jared Verse did and the rest of the Rams D-line did to Brian O'Neill, who's one of the top right tackles in the league for most of that game, it made me just find a newfound appreciation for Spencer. And considering he usually is due for at least one or two boneheaded penalties throughout the game, and he didn't have a single penalty or allow a single pressure. To me, Spencer was the standout player of the game, even though I do also have to give props to Dion for, number one, dragging James Cook almost an
Oh
extra
God,
10, 15 yards on that one run.
Yeah.
And then
that was beautiful.
also, I don't root for injuries, but he smacked the guy so hard that he sent him out of the game. Like, he was just on another level on Sunday. I mean, really, the entire O-line stood up. I think you can give them all props. I just specifically went with Spencer just because of, watching that Rams game last night. It kind of gave me a newfound appreciation for what Spencer did, throughout the year.
Mhm.
But there was really only one sack that the team gave up, which was on their third drive. Other than that, that second sack Josh took, I put that more on Josh for not getting rid of it. And Denver just
Fair.
did a good job of containing him on that play ultimately. But to me, Spencer was my standout player.
That's definitely a good choice. And I actually, I didn't expect it from you, Ben, being Spencer Brown. I figured you might have said somebody a little different, but I'm gonna go with it because that is a definitely really good choice. Uh,
Thank you.
Mine is probably going to be a little, maybe not obvious, but it's definitely going to be somebody you might not have expected either. That's Curtis Samuel. I think it's about time we
Okay.
realize that Curtis Samuel exists, and it seems to me as if the Bills coaching staff was trying to basically prepare him for the playoffs by giving him as little a workload as possible. Because if you watched Curtis Samuel back when he was in Washington, I mean, he is a good receiver, even though he was alongside Terry McLaurin and they had a really, really bad cast of quarterbacks back then. I mean, he is a really good receiver, and he showed it in that one particular play. Allen hits him, and he just scoots his way through the tackles and gets right into the end zone. I mean, this was his game to show up, and he showed up. And now it's going to absolutely change the look on offense if you're a defensive coordinator scheming against the Bills, because now you got to be like, wait a minute, I forgot Curtis Samuel existed. He's on this team. Oh, crap. Now we have to go back and we have to completely redo whatever offensive game plan you had, because at the rate that James Cook has been absolutely cooking, literally, you got to worry
Yeah.
about stopping him. And if you can't stop him, then you got to worry about getting those receivers contained. And if Curtis Samuel turns into his old self again, we're in business because you can't stop them all. You can't stop Curtis Samuel because then Shakir gets loose. You can't stop just Shakir, or again, Curtis Samuel gets loose. And you can't try to somehow stop them both, or else Keon's going to moss somebody in the back of the end zone. So for
Yeah.
me, it's definitely going to be Curtis Samuel. And fun fact, he actually led the team in receiving yards. He had 3 targets, caught all 3 of them for 68 yards, and that 155-yard touchdown. So, yeah, definitely Curtis Samuel is going to be the standout for me out of a list of a lot of really good choices,
Yeah.
honestly. Let's hear yours,
Tons
Paul.
of great choices for player of the game. I mean, standout player of the game for all of us. I mean, Curtis Samuel. I mean, you really didn't see much the rest of the year. For most of the season, and then in one of the most important games, leading into the divisional round, and setting up what it could be a possible playoff run. Curtis Samuel gets three targets, catches all of them, and turns it on to another level. Maybe it was the Joe Brady just keeping him to the side so he can emerge into the playoffs.
Mhm.
But my player of the game was the Bills' highest graded highest graded run defender, the second best coverage grade, and had the third best tackling grade this week on the Bills defense. That is the one and only Matt Milano. I mean, he was everywhere on Sunday. Like right from the beginning, the first play of the game, he was the second guy on the first tackle of the game, and he just goes in, he just lays on a second hit on I think it was on a run play on the opening play for Denver, and then he just feels healthy again. He finally is back up to speed.
Oh, he
He's
is back.
finally back to the Matt Milano tackling that we know, where he's just there in this space and this able to just go in and make an important tackle, a great tackle. It's just so good at what he does. It will help the Bills in this game heading forward, right? Even though we're talking about, this game, he had a QB hit, and he also had a sack in this
Yep.
game against the Denver Broncos. Only that will get better for the Bills as we want to see their defensive line to keep showing up. Matt Milano is a big part of that, even though he plays the linebacker position. He's able to generate pressure. He's able to be that one linebacker that can sit and spy a quarterback. He just does it all in one body. He's just so good at what he does. And basically, that's why he's my player of the game. He's back.
Yep. I mean,
to
it's valid.
Matt Milano form.
Yep. I mean, perfectly valid. I would have never thought Matt Milano would have been absolutely, his full self after the rate of injuries, but he's
The
definitely
silent
proven that he hasn't
assassin.
lost that much. Like, he has not lost much of his step at all. And I definitely think that that's going to be huge going forward because now, remember, he was not active when we faced the Ravens in the regular season game. He wasn't active at all. And, we couldn't really do much
Neither,
of anything on defense.
I mean,
We
neither
were
was
missing a
Terrell
lot of
Bernard.
things.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I was just gonna mention neither were Terrell
Neither was
Bernard
Terrell Bernard, neither was Taron
or
Johnson. I mean,
exactly.
there were so many players that were just not there. Von Miller was on a limited snap count. I mean, this is a totally different defense than what Baltimore already saw. We have a lot more options open to us now to be able to guard Lamar Jackson from being able to take off out of the pocket if his receivers all get clogged. And I think having Matt Milano back to kind of be a QB spy on most of the possessions, especially third down, is going to be big because now you can just have him basically cover Lamar the whole time. The minute he starts to think he's going to take off and run, Milano's just there. And that's going to be very big going down the stretch in that game because the minute Lamar gets pressured, he's going to absolutely try to take off. And if we've got a spy sitting right there in the form of Matt Milano, he's not going anywhere.
All right, let's get into that Ravens game. What is everyone's level of optimism heading into the divisional round compared to last season? To me, I think I'm a little more optimistic, but also it's kind of tough to read because we were at home both games, and I figured eventually we got to beat this team in Kansas City, right? Well, Baltimore has been a juggernaut all season, and I kind of have been just very nervous about facing them, but I am cautiously optimistic, but I don't want to get too ahead of myself. I think I sit about at the same level of optimism though compared to last season. I think we can win the game, but I also don't want to get too far ahead of myself.
Yeah.
That's the most reasonable way to look at it, really, is you can remain confident, but you definitely don't want to think that the Bills are absolutely going to win this game because this is going to be a very tough game for the Bills. I'm personally, if you rate the confidence levels from like a 1 to a 10, I'm probably about like a 5, maybe a 6, and that'll go up depending on what we get out of the injury report to be released in the coming days, particularly with Brandon Codrington. I really hope that whatever was going on with him is going to be okay. just in general, obviously. But I hope that he can recover enough to be able to play, because having him on punt returns and kickoff returns is just incredible. I cringed a little bit every time I saw Shakir return a punt, because I'm just like, oh, please don't get blasted out of the end zone. Please don't get blasted. And now, if Codrington comes back, that's a whole new element added to the Bills game. Of course, we'll be watching all the injuries, of course, but at the same time, I'm definitely, I'm decently confident. It's a totally different team, totally different environment. Playoff Lamar Jackson will show up again at some point or other. Last year, we saw it in the AFC Championship game. Year before that, I believe we saw it, divisional round? Or, yeah.
Something like that.
So he'll show up again. It'll just be determinant on whether or not we get him. That's going to be the reason to whether we win or don't win this game. And obviously, if he starts having a bad game, they're going to try to pick up a lot of that slack with Derrick Henry, which means we just have to stuff that box. Stuff the box and make sure he can't get in the open field. And yeah, it's kind of hard to tackle that big dude, so you got to make sure you can wrap him up. We saw him pulverize a few Steelers players, including Minkah Fitzpatrick, who's a pretty good safety. He just got absolutely bull rushed by Derrick Henry, and it happens. So it's all about tackling. Make the tackles.
Trying to be as optimistic as possible for this game.
That's
I would
hard
say
for
my level of optimism fluctuates just a little bit almost every day. Some days it's at a 5, some days it's at a 6, some days like I'm ready to go. Like even though some days it has only been the last 48 hours, but that's the mood swings I'm having right now. Even though some of it is personal and biased because I'll be at the game, so I kind of want to be, a part of this and like be super optimistic about this. But it really just comes down to this: the Bills are coming into this game primarily healthy. Like most of their core players, their important players, are healthy for this game. Taron Johnson, Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, primarily the entire defense. There's one injury to Alec Anderson. So I think other than outside of the main guys, we'll be okay. So we will be okay on that front. But what also brings up my level of optimism is the peak of this Bills team right now. The Bills peaked at a good time last year, but their peak weared them out toward the end of that season. They had to win games in order to win the division. This year, they clinched the division so early, they were able to peak later in the season, and we're starting to see the full peak of the Buffalo Bills right now. Like the last 3 weeks of the season heading into the postseason is kind of like where we're start seeing this peak of this team. And it goes back to the offensive line and what the Bills did. Josh was only pressured 5 times on Sunday. That's wonderful. And you give Josh Allen time against the Lamar Jackson, against the Ravens defense. Josh Allen should be able to.
I didn't know Lamar Jackson's playing on both sides of the ball now.
Yeah, hey, there is a cornerback named Lamar Jackson. Remember that.
But
I don't remember where
Josh
he is
Allen
now.
Should be able to go down the field with some ease if he gets some protection. The Bills outgained the Broncos by 200 plus yards on Sunday. I mean, even goes further to everyone East just continue to work. 30 plus passing touchdowns, 30 plus rushing touchdowns for the first time ever. And then Josh Allen targeted 8 different players on Sunday. The Bills. I have one more interesting nugget about this. The Bills are 1-3 in games where Josh doesn't target 7 or more different players.
That is an interesting stat.
Yes, it is.
Let's get into the biggest difference heading into this matchup versus the week 4 matchup. For me, we kind of touched on this earlier, but obviously it's the overall health of the defense. You didn't have obviously Matt Milano, but you also were missing Terrell Bernard. Taron Johnson is one of the better run defending nickel corners in the league, and it is so important to this Bills run defense. So to me, I think it's that plus the addition of an Amari Cooper, who's another person who could play man when we know the Ravens like to play a lot of man, and Khalil Shakir wasn't fully healthy for that first Ravens game and
That
ended
is
up
very
missing
true.
the end of the game.
That is very true. And also, I just thought of this. I think Joe Brady might have learned not to call a stupid trick play to kill all the momentum in a game.
Yes,
This
hopefully
time
that
around. I
as
don't think
well.
we're going to see that again.
Last year in the divisional round, we got a fake punt. What are we in store for this year, guys?
Oh God!
Then the first matchup, we get a trick play against the Bills Ravens.
Isn't Ryan Fitzpatrick legend of the game? Is he going to suit up just randomly and come out there for like a couple of plays?
They're
Oh
gonna,
dear God! It's Ryan Fitzpatrick with a metal chair.
They're gonna sign him to a 3-day contract, and they're gonna call the same play that Washington called when they put both Mariota and Jay Daniels on the field together, and we're gonna have Fitzpatrick and Josh Allen on the field together, and Fitzpatrick's gonna pitch it back to Josh, and Josh is just gonna hurdle someone and run it like 50 yards into the end zone.
Could you imagine? That'd be hilarious.
Yes.
Even oh man, but if we're going to be in for a wild game on Sunday, I am sure of it. Even if that doesn't happen, I think. Well, obviously it won't happen, but
hey, never say never.
This is true, but I feel like we're going to be in for a very fun time nonetheless.
Maybe the Bills want to finally give Fitzpatrick his first Super Bowl trophy, so that he'll come out of retirement.
Exactly. I mean, hey, the Rams did it a few years ago with Eric Weddle. Why can't we do it with Ryan Fitzpatrick, huh?
All right, Paul.
Why not?
What's your biggest difference going into this game?
The obvious answer is injuries, but I'm not going to the obvious answer because everyone talks about the injuries, and it's the obvious answer. So I'm going to go kind of something in depth, and it kind of goes back to what Rasul Douglas said after the game. Just how this team has matured since that last matchup. They lose their first game of the season to the Ravens, and it was embarrassing. Like 35-10. It was just really just bad football most of the game.
Sure.
And they will lose the following week to the Houston Texans. We all know what happened in that game.
Oh God.
Poor coaching. Josh Allen just looked off the entire game. From that point on, the Bills learned how to win, and they bought in to whatever culture was Sean McDermott has been building since the offseason. Even though the first three games of the season, the Bills won, they kind of raced through the first 3 games of the season, they got humbled 2 weeks after. The Ravens game, the Texans game, and then they just went on this epic winning streak. And that's kind of like the biggest difference for me is how mature and tight this group is. And I'm going to give you the Rasul Douglas quote because I think it's so important to how this team kind of thinks. Was the question asked by Matt Beauvais after the game to Rasul Douglas. Basically, they give up that touchdown on the first 4 plays of the drive, and it was about 2 minutes into the football game. Rasul Douglas says, 58 more minutes left in that game. You can't heap 2 minutes. Oh my God.
Oh my good Lord, read. Paul.
You can't harp 2 minutes. You have a bad day for 4 minutes. You say you had a whole bad day. You have 23 more hours and some change. That's how we look at it. So 2 minutes, 4 plays into the game, they give up that play. They erased it from their memory and they stopped Denver the rest of the game. That shows you the mindset this Bills team has. And I really feels like it has stemmed from that week 4 game when they got humbled in Baltimore.
That's actually a good point because this is definitely a much different team. And I'm sure that they remember what happened in that game. But if you're talking about differences, and I think this is probably going to be the one that really is the main point of contention. This isn't just a random regular season game anymore. This is the playoffs. This is the win or go home type deal. And that is going to affect a lot of emotions on the field. That's going to affect a lot of how the team plays. They rally around each other a whole lot more than they would have during the first game because, obviously in the first game, they fought hard, but it just wasn't enough. Oh, this time there will be no quit because this is the playoffs. You win or you go home. And now with a fully healthy team, this is going to look much different. The playoffs just have a way to bring out the best in players. And that certainly applies to Josh Allen of all players. It applies a whole lot to him. And the inverse applies to Lamar Jackson. So, you know what? A reminder as well. This should be, if I'm remembering correctly, one of, if not the coldest game Derrick Henry has ever played a game of football in. The last time he played a game in really cold weather, I think it was like maybe 25 degrees or something like that, was in Kansas City in the AFC Championship game when the Titans somehow made it in 21. And, oh no, it was 19, my bad. And they kind of got
it was like
smoked.
a 16-degree day. It felt like 8, but
and it's going to be an 8-degree day. It's going to be an 8-degree night in Buffalo. It's going to be very hard for the players to be able to hold on to the ball.
I wonder if McDaniel wishes it was colder.
He probably does. Let's be completely honest. He's probably watching.
To be
this
honest,
going,
he's probably sitting in his office right now. He's like, man, wish it was me.
Sitting in Cancun, going, yeah, I wish it was me.
Nah, let's be honest. He's sipping on a coconut in a jacuzzi somewhere in Cancun,
while the city of Miami stinks into the ocean.
Yes. But let's wrap up with this. The Bills need to do blank effectively in order to beat the Ravens. And I'll take the obvious here again. You may as well nickname me Captain Obvious for the rest of the show because I've been stating a lot of the obvious, but I think it's kind of holds true. Kind of when we were discussing the Lions game, it also held true. They need to stop the run. And if they're able to contain not only Derrick Henry, but Lamar Jackson had over 100 rushing yards against Pittsburgh too. That read option that he does when he either gives it to Henry or pulls is going to be utilized heavy at Highmark. And I even think the Bills should potentially look at playing some 4-3 and getting out of their base nickel at times and putting in Dorian Williams because he's got the speed to cut down Lamar Jackson, stay with him. And not only that, he's got the strength and power, I think, to stop Derrick Henry in his tracks. But also, I will say this too. If you remember the last time the Bills played Derrick Henry on that Monday night game, who was it that had that huge tackle for loss in the backfield in one of his first games ever playing big minutes?
It's a good question. How about you give us the answer there, Ben?
All right, I thought Paul might know, but if you remember, Damar Hamlin
was in the middle of a yawn. What was the question?
Sorry, I was putting you to sleep, but no, I was asking the last time the Bills played against Derrick Henry, it was who stopped him on a huge tackle for loss, and I'll just spoil it because I just said a couple seconds ago. But Damar Hamlin, he had a huge tackle for a loss against Derrick Henry, and if he can make plays like that, it's going to be important. Taylor Rapp's going to have to make plays. And the defensive line's going to have to get some pressure. And I mean, we got to make Lamar throw. If he beats you throwing the ball, I mean, I don't know. Is Zay Flowers going to play? I haven't really heard anything, but he's not going to be 100%. But make them beat you through the air. If that happens, so be it. But we cannot allow, 150, 200 plus rushing yards in that game.
Oh, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. But on the inverse, this is actually going to be my 1 point to the game that the Bills absolutely must do to win. Ben, you said stop the run. I'm going to be the one to complete the Tomlinism, pound the run. For God's sakes, get James Cook motivated and get him going just like against Denver. Literally, let him cook. Let Josh Allen use those legs when he needs to. Run the ball. That's how we beat Denver, and that's exactly how we could beat Baltimore.
Exactly,
Just
because
by
if you could,
running
because
the ball.
if you could keep Lamar and Derek on the sidelines, that's going to keep your
That
defense
especially.
fresh, and that's
Yep.
going to get that offense out of rhythm. You know,
Win the time of possession.
the Denver offense started out red hot, but they're on the bench so long in that first and second half that when they got back in the game, they were just completely ice cold.
That's exactly it. You've got to win the time of possession game at all costs against Baltimore.
Yeah.
That means you run the ball as much as you can. Get Ty Johnson involved. Get Ray Davis involved. You got to get them guys involved somehow. So that's going to be my one point to this game. That's going to be the most important for us. If we want to win, we have to run this ball. That's how you win games. That's how you've always won games in this league, is running the ball. Especially with how good Josh's offensive line has been this season. Run the ball. You got no excuse. Run the ball.
Stop the run, pound the run. Another way to you win a football game is also on defense, is effectively get stops on third down. The Bills in the first half of the game on defense were the Broncos went 2-5 in the first half on third down. In the second half, the Denver Broncos didn't convert a single third down. They were 0 for 4 in the second half, making them 2-9 in that game. Let's go back to the first matchup against Baltimore. Baltimore in that game was 5 of 9 on third down. The Bills have to get off the field on third down. That basically gives the offense with Josh Allen and company more possessions. How are you going to beat the Baltimore Ravens is by getting as many possessions as possible on offense. But when you do get the ball on offense, you also have to convert your third downs. The Bills in the previous matchup were 3 of 19 on third downs in that week 4 matchup. You have to convert your third downs, but you also have to get off the field on third down.
Oh, you absolutely do.
It's basically pound the run, stop the run. You tap third down, you have to convert third down.
Before we move into our game picks, I just want to say I love the way you said Baltimore. It's a very unique way of saying it, and I'm gonna be calling it Baltimore from now on.
Baltimore.
I am a little stuffed up, so maybe the A sounded like an O.
Yeah, either way, it was very unique, and I appreciate it. But let's wrap up with
the Bills 31-24.
Oh yeah, there we go. Bills 31 Ravens. I like it. I absolutely like it.
Let's go. Thank you for tuning in today, and I see we also have, I believe that's Robbie in the house. Hi, Paul and crew. Go Bills.
Oh yeah, go Bills.
Really quick, Robbie, I'm going to answer this question before we get into game picks.
This week?
Do the Bills win this week?
Maybe.
I'm super. We are. I mean, if you've ever watched the show, or this is the first time, we don't pick the Bills here, and just for.
But now you're being put on the spot. This isn't our game pick. You have to give them an answer.
But my answer, because I'm being put on the spot, I think the Bills win this game.
There we go.
But it's going to be super close. I think it's going to be like 27-24. It might have to come down to
who's getting the safety
to Mr. Number 2, Tyler Bass. It might have to come down to him once again this year to put the Bills into the AFC Championship game. But
not again. Don't make me rely on Tyler B. Ass again.
It's more like Tyler is ass. Let's move on to our game picks to wrap up, though.
If bullying worked for Ed Oliver, bullying can work.
How did we end up doing last week in our game picks?
Last week on game picks, I did the worst as always because I've been super average this week. Ben went 5-2 last week. Connor went 4-3. I went 3-4. That puts the standings really close entering this week. I'm kind of officially eliminated from this. Connor,
there's almost no way I win.
3 games behind Ben. We have 4 game picks this week. If you go undefeated and Ben doesn't win a single game this week,
I'm just gonna pick all the games of Connor picks though.
Oh yeah, all right.
So now this turns into a game of strategy between you two, and I could just sit here and watch it play
Yeah,
out.
because you're
So
pretty
let's
much
go.
eliminated there, Paul. All
I
right,
am.
let's get into it.
Chiefs Texans is the first game on Saturday. It's also maybe the only game this week that could have a potential upset.
Spoiler alert, as much as I want to see an upset, I am not picking the upset. I hate picking them, but I think Kansas City wins this game. I think Houston's defense is a different unit with Aziz Al Shair, and as shown against the Chargers, but we know the Chargers are going to charger, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I can't pick against Kansas City unless a team shows me that they can beat them in the playoffs, other than Cincinnati or Tom Brady, of course. So, unfortunately, give me the Chiefs.
Yep. Every single point echoed again. It's the Chiefs. The black magic is going to happen somewhere. The Texans might have a pretty underrated defense, but it's not going to be enough to stop Mahomes. I am also taking the Chiefs, even though they've had a little bit of rest. We'll have to shake off a good bit of rust. I'm taking them anyway. They're going to probably win this game.
So we're potentially forecasting a Bills Chiefs AFC Championship game.
Maybe.
The last time the Bills were in the AFC Championship game, they had to play the Chiefs in Arrowhead. All right, next game is Detroit hosting
You're not going to pick that. You're not going to pick that game.
I think he's forfeit.
Kansas City.
Okay.
Oh, all right. We're even. We're all even.
I was gonna
there.
say,
Right.
I know you're behind, but you can still, maybe you can catch up with Cotter.
I picked the game in full sweep. I didn't say that. I didn't clearly say the team, but thought I hinted at it.
You hinted at it enough.
Detroit and Washington, another sneaky upset.
No, unfortunately not. I like what Detroit is doing, or I mean, Washington's doing. I love what Detroit's doing, obviously, but I like what Washington's doing. Credit to them for coming in to beating the Bucks in their first playoff win in over 20 decades. Dolphins can't relate with that. But I think this Lions team, they're at home. Their defense looked much different with Alex Anzalone back in the lineup. They're potentially getting David Montgomery back as well, so they'll have that Sonic and Knuckles pairing. I don't think a team's going to beat them in Detroit throughout this playoffs. Spoiler alert, they're my pick to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. But give me the Lions.
Yep. I mean, the Commanders had a really great run, and I really do like the fact that Terry McLaurin has a real quarterback for once in his life. But the Linsanity run has to end, and it has to end this week. So I'm absolutely taking the Lions here. Get the Lions to the NFC Championship game, and we'll see what happens from there. Paul, go ahead with yours.
This Detroit-Washington matchup kind of reminds me kind of like a higher-end college football team against kind of like that mid-tier college team where they're going to hang around. They're going to be a pain in the neck the entire game, but at some point, the better team is going to pull away, and that better team is the Detroit Lions. I think Washington can give Detroit a run for their money, maybe for 3.5 quarters, maybe 2.5 quarters, but Detroit will eventually pull away with this game. So I'm also going Detroit.
Good old
Detroit
Riot.
This could be the first one where we get an upset, because we all know Connor's roots lie in LA. Eagles and Rams.
Screw it. If I'm wrong on the game this week, I'm wrong, but also I could be wildly right on this one. And this Rams team going to the playoffs won 9 of 11 games, not including the Week 18 game where they rested their starters and played Jimmy Garoppolo. They lost to the same Eagles team and Miami, of course, but you can't win all the rest of your games. But that defense has been playing much better as of late. And with that defensive front, I actually think they have a chance of giving complete hell to Jalen Hurts and also trying to bottle up Saquon Barkley. On the flip side, that offense, I think, has enough firepower to put up some points against a banged up Eagles defense. And I just think with everything going on in LA, they're actually playing for something. And let's be real. This was the main reason I picked them last week. But if you're a lot of a big factor in playoffs comes down to coaching. And are you really going to take Nick Sirianni over Sean McVay? I'm not. So give me the Rams in an upset.
Well, you definitely had a different reason for it than I did. But the thing that really makes me, question the Eagles is, has Hurts really? I mean, Hurts has been really good this season. I mean, obviously they had a really great record, and they had a really good game to close out against the Packers. But I cannot just. This is the game where the upset happens, and the God bless the front for the Rams is just potent. I mean, we already saw it in a regular season matchup this year already. Jared Verse absolutely bulldozed Jordan Mailata, one of the best tackles in the game. Like, he got absolutely bulldozed. I think that's going to be a very, very big key to them winning this game and pulling off the upset. So I'm also going to say that Philadelphia is about to become Rams' house when the Rams win that game and move on to the NFC Championship game against the Lions. Paul, are you going to be with us or against us on this?
I was going to agree and have 3 straight consecutive, all together. We're all in unison. But because I kind of want the upset to happen, I'm going to go Philly so we don't curse the upset. So I'm going to go Philly. But I also think Philly is probably the better team out of these two teams. Look, we already knew what Minnesota was looking like heading into the postseason. So it was kind of written in script form for the Rams this week was, if you do this against Sam Darnold, he's going to look like this. So it kind of was in script form for the Rams to prepare for the Vikings, and that was really was what it looked like on Monday night. This is a different Eagles team. I do trust Sean McVay probably just a little bit more than Nick Sirianni as if it gets close toward the end of the game. But I still kind of feel like the Eagles at a certain point will pull away from the Rams, or it stays close to the entire game. Who will know? But one final game pick is the national championship game on Monday to close out 3 straight days of football. Notre Dame are 8-point underdogs to Ohio State currently.
I wonder why.
Yep, as much as I believe in this Notre Dame program led by Marcus Freeman, I just don't think they have the offensive firepower against this Buckeyes team, which is a Goliath. And yes, I get it. They've already beaten Georgia. They've already beaten Penn State. They've proven they can hang with these upper echelon college football teams. But I just think, as seen on Friday night, this Ohio State team just has too much talent across the board. And knock on wood, hopefully the Bills are able to add a couple of these playmakers from either side of the football. I would take Emeka Egbuka. I would take Henderson or Judkins. I would take Tyreek Williams. I would take Jack Sawyer. Like, the list goes on and on. This is a very loaded Ohio State team.
For sure.
And you got to give Ryan Day credit. As much crap as he's gotten from the fan base, from the college football community, he's always consistently recruited elite talent, and I think this is finally the year that it pays off for them.
That's definitely, yeah. I mean, that's agreeable. I definitely am going to go with I'm going to go with Ohio State to win this game. I think they've just been able to prove it a lot more. I mean, that first win against Oregon, I really thought was going to be the one that's telling me that they're going to get the national championship. So I'm going to take Ohio State. They're definitely going to be celebrating at the end of the day. And hopefully That game's on Monday, right? Yeah, the Sunday after the
is
divisional
Monday.
Yes, it
round.
is Monday.
So there is a potential that we might not want to even watch football at all if the Bills don't advance, but we'll just see what happens. I'm definitely going to take Ohio State to win this game. And as I just accidentally may or may not have said, maybe this Florida State team could get its act together next season.
Hopefully it can.
Yeah.
This is a very interesting national championship game because we all know the talent on Ohio State, but Notre Dame beat a talented Georgia team just to get to this point. So it makes this interesting because even though Ohio State's super talented, they torched Oregon, they torched Tennessee, they ran away from Texas later in the game.
Oh boy.
It just makes me feel at one point it has to run out, but I don't think it's going to run out because they're that talented. They're that group that is so talented. They're led by a great coach, and they're not playing Michigan. So if they're not playing Michigan, they're winning. So Ohio State wins the game.
I agree.
You know what's going to be very painful for you, Paul? Have you seen how many Texas players on that current team are going into the NFL draft?
Yeah, the list grows.
A lot. I'm talking almost as much as FSU lost.
If
I think Texas is going to regress a lot.
The Bills get Matthew Golden, maybe Makuba. Great draft.
No, all I'm saying is that Texas is going to lose a lot of players. They are probably going to be. They could potentially be like mid-tier to bottom in the SEC if that happens. It's just like what happened with Florida State. We literally lost 9 players around that to the draft last year. And I wish we would have gotten a couple of more than just Keon. You saw my chats. I actually really low-key wish we would have traded up to get Jared Verse before the Rams did. But could you just imagine Jared Verse with Groot and Ed Oliver? My God, absolutely unstoppable front. But at the end of the day, I'm very happy with Keon Coleman. Obviously, obviously Ben is the same happy is the same type of hyped as I am about him. And I still kind of wish we would have drafted Johnny Wilson to go with him because that would have just made an unstoppable wide receiver room. But it is what it is. We're where we're at now. And this is going to be an interesting weekend.
So that should wrap up another episode of the Undercovers podcast. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, hopefully, to recap a Bills win and preview a AFC championship matchup. Maybe even in Buffalo. Maybe we threw out the reverse jinx for Kansas City. But
if only, right?
Let's go Buffalo and let's go Houston too. Why not?
Why not, right?
Why not?
Exactly.
Go Bills, go Texans.
Go Bills and go Texans, I guess.
Go Bills, go Texans. Yeah.